Diablo 4 is not trash.
As the title suggests, I actually think Diablo 4 is a great game. And before you pull the pitchforks and torches out because someone likes a game and is coming to its defense, I want you to understand something. I am not saying it's the best game ever. I'm saying it's a great game for what it is. Now, to discuss why I think Diablo 4 is actually a pretty good game, we have to look at a couple of things here. I want to address why people comparing it to new releases of any genre and type isn't exactly fair in an overarching gamosphere. I want to directly compare to competitors in its class of the ARPG genre, and I want to go over a few things I think it does well, while also addressing some of the absolute dog water that it contains within. Again, it's not perfect, but it's not the flaming dumpster pile that you all think it is, so let's dive in. Firstly, I want to address the elephant in the room. Games are simply different. It isn't an impossible concept, but Twitter, or X now, would have you convinced that there are no barriers and that everything is judged by the exact same metric. The best dessert cannot be compared to the best steak because they are trying to achieve two completely different goals. The same way that you can't compare Call of Duty and League of Legends. The same concept seems to be thrown out the window when it comes to Diablo 4 because it cannot be mentioned in a sentence without somebody sprinting to their desk, sweating, mouth agape, hoping that they're the first to type that it is not Baldur's Gate 3. And I get it. Although I haven't played it, I've watched a ton of YouTube and have experienced Baldur's Gate from numerous angles, and it's an extremely impressive game. But it should not be the comparison to Diablo because it is a turn-based RPG that has a different fantasy theme versus an open-world ARPG or MMO light, whichever term wets your whistle. Now, I'm not biased enough to say that there is no comparison between different games that cannot be done across all of them, such as, is it fun? How great are the graphics? How cheap is it? But to genuinely get a grasp on how it stacks up against the competition, you have to look to its immediate left and right. In the class of Diablo 4, you'd want to look at games within the ARPG genre and discuss the pros and cons of each to decide which ARPG has what you need. Lucky for you, I have. Now this is important because if I see one more Twitter post of someone who's never played an ARPG saying that they hate seasons and it's nothing like the old games, I'm going to Alt-F. On the left, we have Path of Exile, a game so daunting that they recommend you simply delete your character if you mess up before level 20. At its right, we have Last Epoch, a newer game on the market that's known for its incredible build variety, and only that. Before anything else about these games, I want to clarify that I am not bringing these games down to bring another up. There's plenty good in these games. All of these games have excellent pros and cons that make up for an amazing overall gameplay style, but it does beg the question, what really makes an ARPG feel good? For both of these, it's important to look at the new player experience, the endgame experiences, as well as the overall feel of the game. Let's start with Path of Exile. For me, Path of Exile was an incredibly challenging game to get into. I wanted to approach it casually, but was unable to because there's nobody alive except the good doctor who could play Path of Exiles effectively without 3 monitors of guides and YouTube videos in the background. That aside, I did end up playing a Ballista Totem Explosive Arrow build, searching high and low for 6 links and a single fuck to give about the story, and honestly, there really wasn't much to find of either. The world is a linear path that you can barely delineate from, and it forces you to play nearly the same way through each time. In all of this though, I had a great time. I progressively got stronger, eventually understood my build, and even began getting confident enough to test the Crucible mechanics, which was the new seasonal affix when I started playing, almost like Malignant Hearts. There were difficult and really interesting boss battles, I really did love the Trial of Ascendancy, and overall, it felt great once my full build was running, and that took about 50 hours or so. Path of Exile plays like a great game with a bunch of classes, but most can be boiled down to painstaking builds that are hyper RNG and specific, and what I mean by that is getting the specific links that make your piece do what they're meant to do. Now, these builds can absolutely demolish, but the building blocks just don't fit easily together. It's confusing. When you compare to Diablo in terms of game to game, it's obvious that the everyman would have an easier time with Diablo, but the true kick me in the nads I want to grind ARPG diehards truly would find more enjoyment in the late game of Path of Exile. It's awesome, it feels great when you get the power working, and it brings so much nuance and complexity that you could play for a very long time. Moving over to Last Epoch, we have a game that really did feel amazing off the rip. The character and classes are well defined and they offer a ton of playstyles that feel great to toy around with. You get intricate but digestible abilities and talent boards with specializations like any other RPG, but you can also specialize your abilities specifically to make a select few much more powerful and personally tailored to your build. Pair this with relatively fast leveling and the ability to be boosted by friends, and it's no surprise that levels 1 to 60 feel incredibly good to a new player. The story is bland, but it's interesting and easy enough to follow, and the progress all feels great until the story ends. And then you crash into a brick wall. In Last Epoch, after around level 60, you will never get a single upgrade to your gear except for build-specific pieces. The endgame is very simple. You complete these monotonous echoes over and over and over to either A, tap out because they overscale you eventually, or B, build a resource that does make it additionally harder over time. You have to do this for a number of choices, which all drop different gear pieces. So if you want a helmet, you have to go towards the helmet echo. If you want a boot, you have to go towards the boot's echo, and so forth and so on. Progress is not shared across these, but the progress can take an endless amount of time in each of them if you want to get pieces. You have to build up a certain resource to a certain point before certain pieces will even drop, and that can take around, maybe 20 to 40 hours for a specific echo. And that's not even a guarantee that you get the piece of gear, just that you are guaranteeing the RNG chance that it will drop. I played a Void Knight that was basically a spin-to-win barbarian, but had this ability where he would summon clones of himself that also spun to win. I was incredibly strong, which wasn't the problem. I was just a Goliath in a ghost world. The game made me bitter because what was some of the funnest leveling in an ARPG ever was flatlined by almost a no changes whatsoever for 40 long drawn out levels that had no interesting fights or bosses and no dungeons that felt valuable or interesting aside from the one that upgrades your gear, and even that's RNG. Also, no real difficulty towards the end game, just harder elites and the echoes that you run. The game is new and still in active development, and I have friends that say it has improved much since my time of playing, but after maxing my character, I felt almost a burden of relief that it was over, and not like my time spent was rewarded. I haven't really touched it since. Again, I'm not putting these games down. We're talking about Diablo 4 in this video. That is the main topic. Now, this franchise has had incredible highs and lows, with resounding success with 1 and 2. Technically also 3, but mostly financially, as most players didn't really enjoy the gameplay that much. Pair that with a disaster that was immortal, and you'd quickly see why Diablo 4 had high expectations to not suck. Diablo 4, as far as ARPGs go, is a really great game. No, seriously. Starting as a new player, you're met with a bevy of customization options that ARPGs just don't have. It's either pick the skinny crackhead if you want to cast magic, or pick the guy on roids if you want to use an axe. Diablo's character customization has a ton of options, and they look great within the game, cutscenes, and everything else. Appearance really matters here. The leveling and the story are really great the first time around, with breathtaking cutscenes and really cool moral conundrums, and then you never have to do it again. The leveling on most all of the classes and specs feels pretty good, except for Druid, and with the recent patches they've made it even faster and better filled with loot. Just to name what it has immediately that most other games in its genre are missing, I'd be remiss to not start with their open world and timed events. Now, this encourages group play for strongholds, legion events, world bosses, hell tides, etc., and they all get increasingly difficult, meaning that the goalpost will continue to move as you level. It also contains mounts, transmog, quickly paced seasons, meaningful achievements, crafting and farming, random loot interactions, and I could do this all day with features. This game took the best parts of a game like Lost Ark, but left the pay-to-win out, and it brought them to the Diablo universe, and it feels incredible. Well, most of it. See, what Path of Exile immediately does better is the endgame feels genuinely challenging and rewarding when you fully scale a build. And there are multiple build types to achieve different goals. This is unlike Diablo, where you're pressured to run Bone Spear if you're Necromancer, because it's a one-size-fits-all for all the content, and world bosses go down in 10 seconds. What Last Epoch does better immediately is the build variety and ease of understanding. When I look at ARPG builds, I firmly believe that if you select every red ability or every blue ability, that both should work differently and both deal great damage in their own respectable ways. In Diablo, you can definitely choose a different build, but you're going to be relatively capped if you don't choose the multiplicative scaling abilities. This doesn't mean that all classes and specs are bad. The way I've always explained it is this. S tier in Diablo refers to people who are doing 100 million plus crits at max level, A tier are doing 30 to 50, B tier are doing 10 to 30, and C are doing millions in their own right, but not much more. However, millions are more than enough to do all content on level and higher. Diablo is this perfect example of great looking dinner that came from a dirty kitchen. Everything looks the way it's supposed to, but it just feels fishy. Resistances suck, but sorks are still blasting through content well above level. Mounts get caught on everything, but sped up travel immensely still and are still widely used and valued. But here's my subjective experience. I think it's fun. I have friends who have never played an ARPG leveling characters to level 85 and beyond because it's the fun of an MMORPG without the drawn-out incessant grind of dailies and garbage. Every single minute spent is progress, whether it's XP, gold, exploration, or an achievement for killing tens of thousands of a monster type. It's always progress. And all of that comes with gear that does get better over time. And no, that's not a joke. Sure, it gets finicky at the end and some stuff seems the same, but there's genuine min-maxing, and most of my friends have build sets in their inventory to swap between different playstyles, so there's always room to grow and try builds that are different and also min-max for those. The different task prioritizations such as Renown, Strongholds, Aspect Farming, and Nightmares means that there's a ton of ways to approach each and every day you play this game. And if you're looking to try alts, this game does it best. You can rush a friend to World Tier 4 and get them to level 50 in a single hour. You don't even have to be that strong to do it either, usually just above level 75. This game values the minutes played much more than others in its class, and even though some of the minutes are buggy or the piece you'd want doesn't drop, there are negatives in all games. I've had a ton of fun taking on incredibly hard nightmare dungeons, and to this day my main is level 90 and I'm still getting unique drops that are exciting and will give me another build to try yet. The devs have done a shaky but respectable job patching and hotfixing to address the things ASAP, and genuinely, they make a fun game. Even if they fuck up and show everyone your stash, which slows things down, at its core, it still is a genuinely fun ARPG. I don't think it needs to be looked at like Baldur's Gate or Dark and Darker, but looked at by its peers and what's around it, and see if it genuinely stacks up. But if you ask me, I think it does. If you liked the video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, a comment, or if you're really cute, a subscription. If you disagree with anything, please take it to my comments, but I don't argue my points, I just state them. You feel free to do the same. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, see ya.